Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Yule. Today is January 19th, 2024, Friday at 2:51 p.m. And welcome to the Student Log, your gateway to success in supply chain management. Are you a student navigating the intricate world of logistics, supply chain management, or operations management? Look no further. I've got your back with the latest news, exclusive job and internship leads, and valuable career skill development tips. Join me every week as I dive into current industry happenings, decode complex concepts, and bring you links that are useful to keep you ahead of the curve in the ever-changing world of supply chain management. Whether you're a budding logistics enthusiast or an aspiring supply chain mastermind, my podcast is tailored just for you. Hit that subscribe button now to stay ahead in your career journey. Let's embark on this exciting expedition together. And welcome, everyone. It is a overcast, cold, blowy, windy, I guess that is blowy kind of day here in Virginia Beach, Virginia, this wintry Friday afternoon. Hope you all have had a good week. As I said last week and have said in previous podcasts here, the whole purpose of this podcast is to help you kind of learn how to navigate all of the news that's out there. It is very important, not just in operations and logistics, but in supply chain, but in any business field, in fact, in any field, to stay current on what's currently happening in your industry, because that's how you make conversations, that's how you network, that's how you make business deals, that's how you get jobs and internships. You have to be able to speak the language. So that's the purpose of this podcast. So today we've got a few things I want to talk about that's kind of in the news this week. The first couple of stories come from Marine Insight, marineinsight.com, which I highly recommend you take a look at. You can even download the app on your phone and then look at it every day like I do. But there's a couple of things that really stand out to me, and this is I'm noticing consistent trends in these two areas. Number one, wind, environmental issues, those things continue. The environmental aspects of supply chain management and logistics, those aspects continue to be front and center on the minds of logistics and supply chain and operations technicians. And, it's so important. Now, whether you're a fan of offshore wind or not, doesn't matter. You're entitled to your opinion on that. I have an opinion on that. But we're starting to see a lot more development, and we've seen this over the past few years in alternative energy sources. So right on the front page of Marine Insight, there is a story here about the first large offshore wind farm up here in New England. As many of you, if you're in Hampton Roads in Virginia, you may be aware that Virginia is working to build out an offshore wind farm here off of our coast. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Portsmouth Marine Terminal, one of the Port of Virginia's terminals, has been converted to a sort of a hub or a center for starting the building process. So we see that as being a huge issue. There's another story here in the bottom right. United States Coast Guard removes diesel and engine oil from sunken WW2 World War II era military tugboats. Again, an environmental issue. And you see these things going on and on and on and on. And I'm not going to go through all the stories, but you will continue to see, I don't care what business type site you look at, a focus on environmental awareness, environmental sustainability. So if you are one of those students who you're thinking, well, I really like ops, or I like logistics or supply chain or whatever, really like this stuff. It really fascinates me, but it's such a broad area. I don't know what direction to go in. You might want to give some thought to focusing on sustainability management, environmental sustainability management, because that area is a growing area. Alternative fuels, energy sources, even things like making sure that ship ballast water doesn't dump invasive species, which, by the way, has been going on for centuries. How do we prevent that? How do we develop technological systems and innovative systems on ships and trains and trucks and in factories to reduce the carbon footprint. That topic is not going away. It's been front and center in the news for years, and it's going to stay there, and it's going to get more significant. The second big topic you see, and if I scroll back up here, you'll see there are numerous articles on this, is what's going on over in the Middle East. You'll see the middle one here, Indian Navy rescues 22 crew from U.S.-owned vessel attacked by the Houthis. U.S.-owned bulk carrier surrounded by unmanned aerial vehicles off Yemen. Okay, and Houthis launch anti-ship missiles. The story goes on and on and on and on. Red Sea security, African ports report surge in refueling demand amid Red Sea security. The Red Sea is a hot area right now. Excuse me. And what impact does it have on us, and does it have an impact on us here in the United States? And the answer is, yeah, it does. It has a significant economic impact because it is not only sort of almost bottlenecking shipping. And remember, many of our consumer goods come in via ship, but it's also driving up prices, because if ships have to go out of their way to get around the Red Sea, or have to wait, or whatever the case might be, that's problematic, and that's going to drive up prices. So real quickly, if I go over here to Google Maps, okay, let me scroll out here. So for those of you who might need that geography lesson, because you haven't thought about geography in a long time. So here you've got the United States on the left, and you've got Europe and Africa here on the right, as well as China and Asia. So if I scroll in here, you're going to see this area here that's called the Red Sea, and you'll see the Red Sea. So basically, you come in through the Gulf of Aden, you go up the Red Sea, and you end up going through the Suez Canal. Okay, and the Suez Canal is right along here, and it's a choke point. And so basically what happens is a lot of ships, if they're coming from China, okay, coming to the United States, they would come down, they would come through the northern portions of the Indian Ocean, up into the Arabian Sea, through the Gulf of Aden, up the Red Sea, across the Mediterranean, past the Straits of Gibraltar, here at the southern end of the Iberian Peninsula, and then across to the United States. Alternatively, the ships can go from China across the Pacific. So imagine going to the right, coming across the Pacific and landing in the United States on the West Coast, or coming down and going through the Panama Canal to come to the East Coast. So this Red Sea area has become a major problem area. Now, remember, and I've mentioned this several times in podcasts last year, but for those of you who might be new, this is Somalia. And this whole area, Gulf of Aden, and down here off the east coast of Somalia is a pirate area. We still have very active piracy going on here. So a lot of times when ships come down off this east coast of Africa, they try to stay as far off of Somalia as they can, because the Somali pirates have smaller boats, and they can go out pretty far, but they don't want to venture out too far. So ships try to stay off, but they have to come in close here to get into the Gulf of Aden. And as you can see here, the choke point here at the bottom end of Yemen here is very narrow. Okay, and it's a perfect opportunity for pirates. So a lot of attacks, issues that we saw just a few minutes ago in the news are coming in or happening through the Red Sea. Never mind the Gulf of Oman and this whole area here in the Persian Gulf, Kuwait, Iran, and so forth. So this has become a big area. Now, if I click over to Vessel Finder, you can see we still have ships coming in and out of the Red Sea, and ships coming in and out around the Gulf here, and coming through this choke point. So there is still a lot of traffic in there, but traffic is down a bit. You'll notice if I scroll down here, a lot of these ships, and I can't see them because to be able to view ships that say satellite position, I'd have to pay for that, and I don't. But they try to stay off the coast of Somalia here. They try to stay off the coast and come up, but they got a choke point here. So all of this turmoil that's happening in the Middle East between Israel, um, and, of course, um, the Houthis, which is basically Iran, between Israel and Hamas, that's all. It's all problematic. That's a huge problem area here. If you can see right here, you're going to see Israel, and of course you have Saudi Arabia, you have Iraq right here, you have Iran right there, and it's not very far from Iran to Israel, and you have certainly water access through the Red Sea. So that continues to be a huge problem. That continues to be a huge issue. So, so that's two big. Going back to the news, those are two big topics. If you click over here to port technology, which is another one of my favorite sites, you will see a lot of focus on this whole Red Sea issue. Top story: CMA CGM, which is a French company, one of the largest container companies in the world. CMA CGM reshuffle service crossing Red Sea amid safety concerns. And that's exactly what's happening. If you look at the graphic here, and I'm going to click on this to see if if they have the graphic here. I thought they did. So instead of coming up through, leaving, say, Asia, India, China, and coming up through the Red Sea here, to avoid that area, they're kind of rerouting and going down and around Cape of Good Hope, which is a southern port of Africa, to then come up into the Mediterranean to get to Italy, to get to the Mediterranean ports, and even the Western European ports. It takes a lot longer to go all the way around than it does to just shoot right through the Suez here. So CMA has already made their decision that they're going to try and avoid that area. So that's the big story there. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Red Sea crisis sparks second largest capacity drop since Ever Given. Now, that's another story on the Red Sea. Ever Given, you may remember, you can go Google it and you can find out, but Ever Given is an evergreen ship. They got stuck a few years ago, cattywampus, in the Suez Canal, and basically bow on one side, stern stuck on the other, and it really choked off all traffic. The Suez in that part of the canal is very narrow, and it choked off all of the traffic. Big problem, big problem. And of course, capacity dropped because a lot of carriers had to reroute around the Suez because they didn't want to sit there and wait, or it got significantly backed up. We're starting to see a lot of these backups happen now, and or as we just saw with CMA, carriers moving to different routes to try to avoid that area. So you see a lot of those stories. Here's another one down here: Red Sea crisis stifles global shipping. And cybersecurity continues to be a problem. Panama Canal drought, basically interesting story. There's been some issues with Panama Canal because that area of Central America has been facing for several months a significant drought. And they basically use freshwater ponds, lakes basically, that are in that area to raise the locks, right? And because of the drought and shortage of water, they've not been able to raise the locks as much, which means they've had to limit the draft, or the amount of water, or the basically size of a vessel, how much water a ship can have to get through. And they've also limited the number of actual openings, and so the number of slots available to go through. And so that's also created a bottleneck. The last big topic, and I know I mentioned two, one being, of course, the issue with the Middle East and all the security issues there. The other being environmental technology. I would say the third big thing, and we're seeing there's a story in here about this, the cybersecurity piece, but also the smart port piece. There's two articles here about that. Much like environmental sustainability, technology is not going away. In fact, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, we're starting to see more focus on crewless ships, on driverless trucks, on engineerless trains, and believe it or not, on pilotless planes. Okay, this stuff isn't the thing of the future, it's the thing of now. And so a smart port basically is a port's way of focusing on increasing efficiencies by doing a variety of things, by improving tracking, by implementing technologies, by reducing the need for workforce. Workforce demand numbers obviously will go down. So you see one article here on what is a smart port. That's a good one to read. I've read that one. And the other one, the rise of the intelligent warehouse. I predict in the not too distant future, we're going to start to see warehouses and distribution centers where basically we've been talking about them, and I think there are already a few out there, dark warehouses or dark distribution centers where there are no lights inside because there's people inside, but you still have people on the inbound and outbound docks loading and unloading trucks. Well, I read an article the other day that noted that gee, we now have robots combined with AI, artificial intelligence, that can actually load and unload trucks box by box. They can look at the stack in the trailer. They can figure out how to maximize space usage. They can do it. It's already there. So when we start to see more of these intelligent warehouses, which again is combining robotic innovation, and AI, you're going to see distribution center warehouses that have less people. What does that mean for you all as students? Well, it means if you have an interest in technology, smart devices, the Internet of Things, AI, neural networks, all of that, really robotics, all of that really cool engineering stuff, then there is going to be ample opportunities for you in supply chain management. So that's the other one. And along those lines, sometimes I get people that say, I've got a very good friend who's all about trains. He loves trains. He's all about the rail, and I've known him for a number of years. He's a former student of mine from way back. And he always jokes about, you're really focusing on ships and trucks and stuff, but we really need to talk about trains. I wanted to pull this one up. This was open as an open railway map. It's called openrailwaymap.org. And what it does is, although it doesn't have live traffic, it does show you where all the rail lines and stuff are. And of course, if you are in rail logistics, say with Norfolk Southern or CSX, Canadian Pacific, Canadian National, any of those big uh, rail lines, you're going to have GIS systems like this that contain a wealth of information tracking trains on these lines. Now, I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about tracking at the ports. Why is tracking important in supply chain and logistics and in operations? Tracking is important because, number one, time spent looking for stuff is wasted time, and time is money, right? We don't want to spend our time looking for things. Looking for things is not good. Okay, so that's one thing. The second reason that we want to track things is customers want to know where their deliveries are. They want to know what the work in progress is on their products. They want to know these things. And if we don't know where our inventory is, we don't know where stuff is, that's going to create customer discontent. Imagine, if you will, and you've probably experienced this, going into a store, a big box store, and you go in and you look online, and online it says they have 5 of these, right? Because you can check this stuff a lot of times. So you go to the store and you say, hey, it's not out here on the shelf. Can you locate this item for me, maybe in the back room? And they come back 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later or 20 minutes later, and they're like, hey, we don't have any. And I'm like, well, your inventory system here that I looked at online says you have 5. And they'll look it up and they'll say, yeah, our inventory system says we have 5 too, but we don't, right? It gets really frustrating. And then as a consumer, your tendency is to do what? Your tendency is to go to the competitor. Maybe they have it. So being able to track stuff is incredibly important. So the 3 biggest takeaways from the news this week is, number one, the political climate that we see in the Middle East is having worldwide effects, and they will continue until some of that turmoil settles down. It's going to get probably worse. It has economic impacts, and it's going to have impacts on you locally. So that's a big one. The Middle East, I would argue that the Middle East issues, the political turmoil is the biggest issue. The second one, environmental issues. Again, those have been around for a while. They're not going away. If you have an interest in environmental science and sustainability management, the environment in general, but you really like supply chain logistics, pair them up. It's a great pairing. And the third area is alternative energy sources. That is a huge topic within these fields, and there's going to be nothing but growth for that. One final note, this is an internship note, and then I'm going to give you a little extra credit assignment if you choose to do it. But one note, I was talking to a recruiter. Let me see. I think it was maybe Wednesday of this week. So that would have been the 17th. And I was talking to this recruiter who had been recruiting with us for supply chain positions. And I remember I was talking to this recruiter and I'm like, I've been pushing this and publicizing it in various different classes and whatnot. And she told me, she says, we are having a difficult time getting anyone to apply for internships. And this internship happened to be a good one with a great company, and it was paid. And it paid well. And it most likely would lead to a job. So and I've heard that from other employers that people just aren't applying for internships. Folks, one of the biggest things you're going to hear when you get out of school, if you don't have experience, is, before, is they're going to say, hey, you just came out of college, where have you worked? And being able to say I'm a waiter or a waitress, or I was a clerk at, a shoe store, that's fine. I mean, it's work experience, but it's not as valuable experience for getting a logistics supply chain job as if you were able to say, hey, I did an internship for XYZ distribution company and I learned this stuff. Internships are very, very valuable. So I really encourage you to take advantage of those. Okay, your extra credit, should you choose to accept it. This is for the spring 2024 term. Extra credit. I mentioned a few minutes ago that it's important to be able to track things like inventory, and how important that is. And there's a theory, it's a Japanese theory that talks about, it's a simple theory. It contains 5 different components. Okay. And one of those components is to set in place. Okay. In other words, one of the components of this very popular Japanese model is that you put everything where it belongs. Okay. If you send me an email, okay, and you send me an email by, let's say, next Friday, and you put in the subject line, I got the extra credit, tell me what the name of that model is, and I will give you extra points on your final average. So what I want to know is, what's the name of the model? Okay. Put in your subject line in your email, I've got the extra credit. Do it by next Friday. Let's say Friday at noon, and I will give you some points in your final exam. Not final exam, on your final grade. Not sure how many, but I'll give you some. All right. You only get one try, so you do it one time. That's it. All right. With that, we're done. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Take care.